Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Supported Decision Making, Empowering Personal Choice. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands across Queensland, which we are all gathered today. We are on the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara people. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander guests joining us today, and honour the First Nations people we support. My name is Rachel Meehan. I'm the Community Education and Engagement Officer here at the Office of the Public Guardian, also known as OPG. Joining me today are some very special guests, Rebecca Anderson, who's the team leader at ADA Law, and Sam Leahy and his mum, Anne. Welcome, everyone. Together, we'll explore supported decision-making, how it empowers someone to make choices, its importance from a human rights perspective, and we'll introduce you to some practical resources so that you can use those to help work through some real-world decisions. So let's talk a little bit about what is supported decision-making. Well, it's all about empowering individuals to make their own choices with the right support tailored to their needs. It's a way to help people stay in control of their decisions and their lives. As the supporter, your role isn't to make decisions for the person, but to guide them in understanding what their options are, to help them consider the possibilities and allow them to express what they want. This approach is preferred because it respects a person's human rights and their ability to make their own decisions. You may have also come across the term substituted decision-making. At OPG, the Public Guardian is appointed by the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal, also known as QCAT, to act as substitute decision makers. This means OPG have been appointed to make a decision on behalf of someone who is unable to make that decision even with support. This is an extremely restrictive option because it removes their legal rights to make their own decision. Making a substitute decision should only be used as a last resort and only if meaningful attempts were made to support the person to make their own decision. So our aim today is to help you understand supported decision-making so that the person and those of you who support them feel empowered to take part in decisions about their lives as much as possible. To explain more about supported decision-making, let me now hand over to Rebecca from ADA Law.
Thanks, Rachel. So just a little bit about ADA Law for people that haven't heard of us before. We're a not-for-profit organisation and we are funded by the government to assist people who may have a question mark around their ability to make their own decisions. We support them, whether that's going through a QCAT proceeding or in some cases if that's going through the Mental Health Review Tribunal. And we also assist them if they're having issues with attorneys and enduring power of attorney documents. So a little bit about why we do supported decision-making. The legislation really is directing us this way. Australia's a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disability, and that sets out for us some expectations that we as a signatory will hold and apply. So we see that people should be making their own decisions. That's regardless of whether they have any sort of disability or diagnosis. And it's about providing them the sort of support that they require to continue to make all of their own decisions. It's also about keeping them involved in any decisions, so not removing them from it, but keeping them involved and assisting that person to express their will and preference. There's legislation in Queensland and Australia that supports this convention, such as the National Disability Insurance Scheme Act, the Aged Care Act, and in Queensland we have the Guardianship Act and the Powers of Attorney Act. All of these legislations respect the person's right to autonomy and decision-making. When we think about it in a person-centred approach, each of us could be on a spectrum of decision-making on any particular day. So for some of our decisions, we're making them independently. So that might mean I'm fully in control of the decision. I'm fully in control of getting all the information that I need to make that decision. I might talk to people and sound off some ideas and plans, but ultimately the decision finally sits with me. Or for a particularly complex decision, I might need some extra support. So it might be the people around me who I trust and request help from will help me to gather the information. They might facilitate meetings for me. They might make sure I'm aware of all the options, or they might need to assist me with the technology so that I can receive the information in a way that works for me. And then in more restrictive situations, it might be a bit more formal assistance that my supporters are helping me. So they might be a nominee at Centrelink, or they might be a representative for me with the doctor, or they might be helping me, dealing with banks and things like that. Ultimately, everything that they're doing is to support me, but it's at my discretion and I'm in charge of the situation and they're just there to support me. So the way we work with the supported decision making is a way to give it some sort of a structure so people can work with it, is that there's 5 core principles to it, which is that we start with the belief and the recognition that everyone can make their own decisions. We give them support, not substitute decision making. You think about it in your own context, you feel more valued if you're in charge of the decision and the people are working to help you rather than take over and make decisions for you. We respect what matters most to the person. So it's not about doing what we think is best, it's what the person is hoping to achieve, and we're supporting them to do that. And we're respecting their views and wishes. And we're balancing dignity and safety. So sometimes choices come with some consequences. So we're assisting that person to be aware of those consequences and helping them to understand what that might look like for them. We're not saying that all decisions are avoiding all risk. It's about weighing that up and taking that into account. And most importantly, we're being flexible. Every person needs different support in different ways for different decisions. And it's important that the support that we offer them is the support that they wish to receive, and it's how they wish to receive it. In the legislation in Queensland, we have what's called the general principles, and at ADA Law, we call these our roadmap to supporting decisions. So we start with the fundamental assessment that a person has capacity to make all of their own decisions. If we feel that there needs to be an assessment about their capacity, it has to be a functional assessment. So it doesn't matter what their diagnosis is, it's about practically how do they need support, what areas, and from whom. Best interests are not reflected in the general principles. That's a very judgment-laden position, and people will often come at a situation and everyone thinks they know what's best. So that can be very difficult to navigate. So we don't work with best interests, we work with the views and wishes of the person. So that leads us to point 3. What would the person decide or want if they cannot communicate with us at the moment? So we're looking at the previous decisions they've made in their lives, the style of lifestyle that they worked with, the people they supported themselves around. And that's informing us of what decisions they'd like in this next scenario. Most importantly, we maximise autonomy. So everything that we're doing is to bolster them making their own decisions, to ensure that they can continue to grow and learn and experience new situations. And finally, we're making decisions informally wherever possible. So we only need to formally turn to appointed decision makers as a very last resort. When we talk about what we can do to support the person, it's about asking them, who do you find supportive? What sort of support do you want? How can we work through this? And it's having those conversations with the person, and it's the support that they request from the people they want it from. A lot of our clients will say, I have a really good relationship with this person, but I don't trust them with this particular issue. It might be a financial question and they don't think that person's a good financial decision maker. Okay, so who would you trust to make your financial decisions? Let's meet with them and see what options they can provide for you. Really important to remember that supported decision making is not a quick, easy process. It is slow, it can be long, it can be circular. You can find that you go around and around having discussions and we move incrementally forward and then 2 steps back. But it's all about empowering that person to ensure that they have all of their quality of life and their engagement in their choices. So in practical terms, how to apply supported decision making. And Anne and Sam, who are with us in the room, are the experts at this, so I won't go on with this too much. But essentially, you're breaking things down to bite-sized pieces. It might be a big decision, but how can we make it incrementally? So small pieces, deal with at the time, and then move forward. We're allowing time and repetition of information. So we're not expecting a person on the spot to come up with an answer to something. We're thinking about this. This is a big decision. Let's give it some time. Let's have a plan about how we're going to continue to discuss this. Really importantly, we allow people to have trials and reruns and tests, and we give things a go. None of us who don't have a disability are ever judged for doing a wrong thing or making a mistake. And that's the same for people with disability. They should have the right to have things, see how they go. And importantly, we like to activate supporters. So with the person in the centre of it, working through with them, who do they find supportive? How can we get them to be helpful so that we don't have to end up with a formal decision maker?
Thanks, Rebecca. So now we're going to run through a practical 8-step approach to help everyone involved today in offering the right level of assistance whilst still respecting the person's independence and control. You'll see on the screen now we've got a diagram. It's person-centred and it's circular, as Rebecca mentioned, because it's important to remember this process is purely a guide and it can vary in time and complexity depending on the decision being made. As Rebecca said, it's not always a straightforward step-by-step approach. You might move between steps. You might jump from step 1 to 3 and then back to step 1 again. So let's now take us through this 8-step approach, and then Sam are going to provide their experience on how this process worked for them. So firstly, we would get to know the person. We'd understand their views and wishes, what their likes and dislikes are, what activities do they like to do, what are their values and what's important to them. Then we're moving into identifying the decision. Be clear about what the decisions are that need to be made and why it matters. Will it have an impact on the person's life? What decisions need to be made now, for example, or what can we hold off until and make later at a later stage? Step 3 is preparing for the decision. This is where you would identify and involve the right people. Trusted people and supporters such as family, friends, professionals who know the person well and can provide the relevant information that you need. It's also important to actively avoid or manage any conflicts of interest. You also need to consider things like when and where the person is at their best to review the information and make decisions. Then it's all about gathering the information, collecting all the relevant information you need in order to make the decision. What are the options? What are the costs? What are the pros and cons and risks? Who can explain things clearly? Is the information in plain language or visual form? And then you would go through and share and check the information in a way that best works for the person, using simple language, providing extra time if it's needed, repeating information, whatever it is that meets their needs so that they can understand the information available to them. Then step 6 is exploring the options together, discussing the positives, challenges, and potential consequences of each option. Once it's all implemented, the person's decided on an option, you don't decide for them. Make a plan to carry it out and assist them with the implementation if needed. So now we're going to talk to Anne and Sam about their experience when they navigated Sam's decision to move into his own apartment and out of the family home. Hi, Sam.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us today.
No problem.
We are excited to hear about your journey and how you and your mum use supported decision making. Your mum is obviously a very trusted person in your life, so she knows you very well. For the purpose of today's exercise, would you like to share with the audience a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you too?
Of course. Okay, so basically I have lived 30 years in my family home. I've got one brother And unfortunately, when I was in grade 10 at high school, my father had died. On a happier note, I've been working at my job here for 17 years, and I was presented with an award for my services. I've been working at my second job for 12 years now. I'm an admin assistant at both jobs, which I absolutely love. I've been catching the train since high school, so I'm very comfortable using public transport to get to work wherever I need to go. I also enjoy singing, and for a few years now, I have been singing in a choir, and I'm also in a dance group.
Thanks, Dan. That's really generous of you sharing that information with us. And it highlights a few things there I've noticed that would be important to you when you're looking for your own home.
Yes.
I wonder if the audience picked up on them as well.
Sam, can you tell me why it was important to you to move out of the family home?
Of course. So I wanted to live on my own so I could have more independence and do whatever I wanted. I enjoy playing my PlayStation, so I've got 4 of them. I like making music with my lute pedal, but I always try to make sure I do it in the afternoons or on the weekend so I don't disturb my neighbors. I love cooking and I like to make meals for myself. I like having my own routine, such as doing my own exercises in the morning and meditating before I go to sleep.
And can you tell me a little bit about how you and Sam identified what decisions would need to be made in relation to Sam moving out of home?
Well, we wanted Sam's life to continue in the way it was, in that he was making his own decisions about his routines and that sort of thing. And as Rebecca and Rachel said, this process of moving isn't a linear process. It can sometimes take a long time. But long before we started actually planning the move, Sam had said as he was growing up that he wanted to do this when he had his own place. So he wanted to do things in his own way. So we discussed for a long time, actually, what he wanted. We had to enlist other people. We did lots of talking about what you can afford to do. We had a belief always right through Sam's life that what was good enough for his brother was good enough for him, and that he's had a total inclusive life in the community. So it was important then that where he lived and what he had to live in was the same as anyone else. We looked at the fact that it needed to be perhaps close to me, close to his work, and he expressed an interest in living in a particular suburb, which we then investigated at length. And unfortunate for him, we started packing up his whole life, because at a time when he was ready to move, I was also ready to move. In packing up Sam's 30 years of life, it became quite stressful. So we then made a decision between us that he would move with me to where I had bought. And we lived together in the new place for 6 months. So we might talk a bit more later about the next part of that move.
So, Anne, when talking to Sam about this decision of where to live, what were the key people or supporters that you needed to bring in to help him make this big decision?
Well, he already had a really good circle of friends. As he said, he was used to catching the train, so it needed to be near public transport, needed to be fairly close to where I was, and have access through public transport. I was still available to drive in places and do that sort of thing, but as part of his independence, he had to learn then to enlist other people who might want to drop him somewhere, and he got used to the fact of asking other people to be involved in that. And then along the way, we formally started looking for a place to live. And he made the decision after asking lots of people and asking around that he wanted to be in a place by himself. There wasn't anyone available at the time to share with. He decided he wanted to be by himself, a place of his own, and it needed to be accessible for him close to transport, closer to me preferably, and extended family who weren't that far away. We did lots of looking, along a couple of different train routes. We enlisted the support of a family member who was really good at keeping track of real estate, and he came with us to look at lots of those places. Sometimes when I couldn't make appointments or he couldn't, then one of Sam's support workers was able to drive him to certain things. It became really evident that this wasn't easy, going through all of that and setting weekends aside. It was pretty stressful, and we took a break. Once he moved into my place with me, with the new home that I'd moved into, then we probably had 6 months, did we, before we started looking again. It wasn't necessarily at my initiative or Sam's initiative that we started the process again. It was someone else giving us a kickstart and saying, hey, we need to get back to this because this was our aim. So that was a break of 6 months, and then we started that process again, so of looking.
And it's probably that because you went through the one move with Mum, you gained some confidence through doing that for your own move. You had a bit more of an idea of what to expect.
A bit, yeah.
Yeah.
We'd also looked at what things you really wanted to keep when moving, where we were going to store your things in the meantime, because they wouldn't all fit in with me. And so you had to then look at all the things you'd accumulated in your 30 years, what were important to keep and what weren't. And that was a big deal, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, to try and do that.
Yeah, it's difficult culling married at those times. So were there any aspects of the decision where Sam needed extra support if we're moving into the next phase of the process?
I think the fact that we had to take a break and stop during it. We were actually making a concerted effort and doing regular visits and real estate things. I recognise and Sam recognises the fact that a couple of hours at the most is what you can do meetings for, isn't it? To concentrate on things, and you'd get frustrated and tiring. Yeah, so we often go somewhere for lunch if we're visiting different.
And get coffee.
Yeah, we had to have coffee.
That's a requirement.
And so it wasn't just Sam and I doing it, though. It was my brother-in-law, Sam's uncle, who was doing the real estate looking most of the time. You know, he was online all the time, keeping a track of that because he had recently done it for himself and his wife. So that was another a really strong support during that. So it wasn't just Sam and I making the decisions, it was him as well. And we also had his support coordinator through his support service who helped him negotiate with his workers, that he only has a couple of very short sessions a week anyway, but to keep them in the loop. But they weren't making any of the decisions. They were sort of filling in at times and then when it came to actually applying and signing documents and that sort of thing, you had to do that, but with my support and with Bill's support and that sort of thing.
So Sam, can you tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you had dealing with gathering the information to live on your own?
Yes.
How you managed to get through that?
Yes. So we focused on the apartments around West End, so I could live near my mum. That's what Mum wanted.
I thought you wanted to live there because of your work.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That's interesting, yeah.
I needed to consider my budget and what I could afford. It was important to find a place close to public transport, especially near a train station.
Yeah.
It took a long time to find the right apartment and finding a real estate agent who could work with me and help me, which was challenging. I also had to learn how to work with my support workers, so I didn't always rely on my mum. One of the biggest challenges was learning that being independent doesn't not mean doing everything on my own. And I've also learned that it's okay to ask for help from family and support workers because everyone needs help sometimes.
Yeah. And it sounds like coming through your story, a little bit of confidence in asking for help.
Yes.
Maybe once upon a time you would have just sat back and let people say and do what they wanted. And
Yeah, because I kept on following it up.
yeah. Okay. And so it took some confidence from you, and you were then able to speak up for yourself and ask for things that you wanted.
Yes. Because I always thought with being independent, I didn't have to do that. And
Yeah.
my mother said to me, that's not living independently. Because even people like men who live on their own.
Yeah. Everybody needs help sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. So, Anne, while you were supporting Sam through this, how did you help him get the right information and discuss that information with him and explore the options? Can you tell us a little bit practically about how you got through that?
I think we had to change tack a couple of times because things that we'd walk into and we had to realise then that we couldn't afford it. Sam's looking at it, he had to look at other things which he'd never had to look at before, where his things might fit in somewhere, how he'd get to and from somewhere. The fact that, to begin with, he didn't have any rental record. And it was a case of sometimes it's meeting the right person at the right time, because we came across a young agent who came when I was looking somewhere one day and Sam was at work. She came and said, look, I think I've got a place. I don't expect younger people or people who haven't had rent before to have a record. I think I've got something that would be suitable. So this is after many, many visits to different things, but also dealing with an agency that happened to be fairly local. And it was someone who then said to us, I think I've got something. We had some lucky breaks, but we also then, each place we looked at, not only was the time looking, it was the actual discussion afterwards about what was good about it, what wasn't, what you liked, what you didn't like.
Yeah.
Some cases it was the fact that it might have been suitable for you, but it wasn't accessible to some of your friends.
Yeah.
And often, in the long run, it turned out that most places we were able to get weren't accessible to anybody who had physical needs, because they were on the second or third floor. And even now, you've got to go upstairs, don't you?
Yeah.
Which is fine for you because you're able to do it. But then there are some people who you have to meet somewhere else. They can't come into your home. And that's a big deal.
It is a deal. It's something to certainly think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you were saying earlier you and Sam have obviously got a really close relationship, and he's used to the way you communicate information, and you've brought in quite a lot of other supporters there that maybe Sam hasn't been exposed to before, that you haven't met before. Did you have any tips on how that information got communicated to Sam so that he understood all of the information that was being presented, from this real estate agent or your uncle?
Yeah, I think it was that it took time. It took time, and going back to what we were saying before, often there were lots of stops and starts, because I know that Sam, most of us, can only go a couple of hours before needing a break and that sort of thing. And you found it exhausting.
Yeah.
And that it was taking up your weekends and your other time. So it was a really concerted effort at that stage. But this went over quite a long time too. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. You were saying that you sit back and you let them speak to Sam, and
that's right.
Yeah.
There are times when people would understand that sometimes when it comes to supports, and I've seen it happen many, many times, whoever you're dealing with will address the supposed support worker, the parent, someone else, and not address the person who this is for.
Exactly.
So that also is a skill that we have, and an experience that we've had to learn all your life, hasn't it?
Yeah.
That we have to wait for people to recognise and acknowledge you're the person that needs to be expressing their desires and interests, and to say whether they're understanding or not. and needing some reinforcement.
And so as a parent setting up your child for their future, that's probably a fundamental lesson, isn't it? To say,
This is
when
a
to step
lifelong,
back and let your
Yeah.
child be their voice.
yeah. So it's a lifelong process. It's not just about this situation. So
And is there anything else you'd like to share with family or friends supporting someone through a decision-making process, such as living independently? Any tips or anything that you think, anything else that you think might be important?
I think that the understanding that it's still ongoing, that it is a lifelong thing. Also understanding that many of our other sons and daughters don't just find a place and stay there, that they move, they come back home sometimes, or often these days, and because it's a big financial risk, and that it is something that's continual, that we have to keep working at it, same as everything else in life. It doesn't just start and finish, that it is a continual process.
Yeah.
That also that you have to stick to your priorities. I mean, our belief has always been that Sam has expressed an interest in living by himself, but in our situation, everything he's always done has been part of community. It's not living somewhere where he's told to live, that it is a choice, and the choice in our situation has always been it's to be a full life, interdependent and independent, but a home of his own.
So, Sam, now that you've achieved this massive goal and living on your own home, is there anything else you'd like to reflect on if we're looking at the last stage of our process that you want to reflect on or share with someone who wants to live independently?
Of course. So it's having a clear plan and support system that has made decision making much easier for me. So living independently is great because now I feel more comfortable sharing my thoughts and ideas. My support coordinator helps me figure out how my support workers can assist me better and how I can communicate my needs more clearly. I've also learned that it's okay to ask for help from family and support workers when I need it. This support has given me the confidence to speak and to live my life to the fullest instead of bottling things up, which used to negatively affect my health and well-being.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is that we keep making different decisions.
Yeah.
And that we have actually, even before this process started, we availed ourselves lots of information. We went to workshops, we talked and were exposed to people who'd done it before and had lots of support along that way, got to know where those supports lay. And then continuing on with that, the fact that we, 3 years ago, Sam's been living by himself now for over 6 years.
It says 6 years ago, yeah.
So, but we've also formed a formal support circle so that there are other people involved in his life, and he chose those people. Together we looked at a range of ages and relationships and things that all people Sam knew and chose and formally asked to be on a circle to support him.
Final word, Sam, about living independently and making your own choices.
So, living independently has been an incredible experience. I now have a support circle that I trust, and they help me work through problems as they come up. Talking things through with my friends and family supporters allows me to hear different opinions, work through ideas, and doing my own research to make my own decisions. For anyone who wants to live independently or make their own choices, I'd say having the right support in place gives you the confidence to take control of your life and make decisions that work best for you.
That's great. So powerful, Sam. Thank you. How about you, Rebecca? Would you like to add anything before we move on to
I just want to highlight that, Sam and Anne are a glowing living experience of how this can work really well for people. And Anne made so many good points as well as Sam about, people don't live in silos. We all need support from time to time. And it's the support that we request and at the pace that we want it. And that's what's really important. It's from people that we listen to and trust. And in my experience, I find that if I try to take over and make a decision for someone, they're going to lose trust in me. So it needs to be on their terms and it needs to be in a way that they're comfortable.
Absolutely. So if we're just going to take a few things home today in terms of take-home messages, I think the important things are that everyone has the right to participate in making decisions about the things that impact them. Following this 8-step approach, it's a guide. It will help you support people with impaired decision-making ability to make their own decisions. And we've got some resources if you need more information. If you have a look on the next slide, you will see that there's our website address and a QR code that leads you to information regarding supported decision-making. ADA Law also have some fantastic resources and workshops where you can find more information. And if you'd like to stay up to date with our news and events, you can follow us on the website, on LinkedIn, and we also upload videos to our YouTube channel as well. So we're going to move now to the Q&A section and have a look at any questions that you might have for our guest speakers. So when would an advocacy agency get involved to support someone in the decision-making process, or how could an advocate help? So typically we would become involved when the person's reached out and said, I've encountered a problem getting through something. So it might be that they've had trouble working with government organisations or agencies and they're not feeling heard or they're not feeling that it's progressing well. If they've already been through the QCAP process and they have appointed decision makers, it might be that they're not feeling heard by those decision makers. And so that's a good opportunity for them to reach out to advocates. There's a variety of agencies across Queensland that do a variety of things. So it might be disability advocacy or aged care advocacy or decision-making advocacy. But essentially, the advocate is there to support you to have your voice heard. So if you're feeling that that's your challenge, that's when you want to reach out for an advocate. Fantastic. Thank you. So we'll just go back to Donna's question regarding decision-making using a circle of support alongside the OT. So the circle of support is really what Sam and Anne have set up for themselves. So Sam has set up a circle of people that support him working through various decisions through life. And I think probably what Donna's asking is how would you use that with working with an appointed guardian? I'm guessing that it would be a task for the delegate guardian to contact the adult first and foremost, and then work through with the adult's involvement, speaking to that circle of support. That's right. So yes. figuring out who it is in that circle, what's relevant to the particular decision, and then with the adult themselves saying, okay, let's speak to mum or cousin or brother or whoever it is that's that supporter that's relevant, and working through what their views and supports could be. Yes, the Guardian always takes a person-centred approach. So they're always wherever they can, establishing the views, wishes and preferences of the client. And if that is difficult to obtain, they will seek information potentially from the circle of support, as long as the adult does trust those people. And sometimes we will make a substitute decision. The general and healthcare principles are integral to how guardians make decisions. How you come at them. So use that roadmap and come at the decision. Yeah, that's right. There's another question here from Rose. Would you recommend the same process for decision making for eating and drinking at risk? Take that one. I'm not quite sure about what that means. We might have to take that one on notice, Rose, and we'll get back to you. That's a particular point. Got any others in the chat? No.
I'll just add to the fact that a circle of support in our case was a formal group that was set up. People were invited to then be part of Sam's Life. Like any of these processes we've been speaking about today, the person who's the centre of the decision and decision making opens themselves up to, they're often very vulnerable because the rest of us are never asked to analyse our lives and to talk enough about ourselves and to have things target us in a way that people do. So there is a real vulnerability. The benefit of that is the more heads around and do things and the more the difference in the way people approach things. If you have people the person at the centre of that trust, it's really great to have so much support and more people aiding in that decision making.
We might wrap it up there. If other people have any questions, our contact details are on the next slide. You can contact us on 1300 653 187 or at publicguardian@publicguardian.qld. There is also a link to a feedback survey. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. It's lovely to see you all online, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.